Hello, my name's Kev. Welcome to KG Graves, the one-on-one series. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more content like this. A big thank you to all of you who are already subscribed.
This is number 50, Harry S. Truman, at the Harry S. Truman Library and Museum in Independence, Jackson County, Missouri, USA.
Of this terribly dangerous weapon has had on the idea of an all-out total war. They're all afraid of complete destruction, which would happen. There's no question about that. If two totally atomic powers with all the bombs in the world went to work at it, there wouldn't be anybody left in either place. This is, I told the young lady who asked me the question, what we were going to do about birth control. And the boy then asked me what we were going to do with an all-out atomic war. And I told him there was one thing, the young lady wouldn't have to worry about birth control anymore.
Harry S. Truman was born on the 8th of May 1884 in Lamar, Missouri, USA. He was the 33rd President of the United States, serving from 1945 to 1953. Harry was interested in music, reading and history, all encouraged by his mother, with whom he was very close. He learned to play the piano at age 7 and took lessons from Mrs. E.C. White, a well-respected teacher in Kansas City. He got up at 5 o'clock every morning to practice the piano, which he studied more than twice a week until he was 15, becoming quite a skilled player. After graduating from Independence High School in 1901, Harry took classes at Spalding's Commercial College, a Kansas City business school. He studied bookkeeping, shorthand and typing, but stopped after a year. Due to the lack of funds for college, Harry considered attending the United States Military Academy at West Point, New York, which had no tuition, but he was refused appointment because of poor eyesight. He enlisted in the Missouri National Guards in 1905 and served until 1911 in the Kansas City-based Battery B, 2nd Missouri Field Artillery Regiment, in which he attained the rank of colonel. After his induction, his eyesight without glasses was unacceptable, 20 out of 50 in the right eye and 20 out of 400 in the left eye, past the standards for legal blindness. The second time he took the test, he passed by secretly memorizing the eye chart. Harry was employed briefly in the mailroom of the Kansas City Star before making use of his business college experience to obtain a job as timekeeper for construction crews on the Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway. Harry and his brother Vivian later worked as clerks at the National Bank of Commerce in Kansas City. In 1917, he entered the Army, where he courted Bess Wallace. When the United States entered World War I on the 6th of April 1917, he rejoined Battery B, successfully recruiting new soldiers for the expanding unit, for which he was elected as their first lieutenant, and his regiment was federalized as the 129th Field Artillery. In mid-1918, about 1 million soldiers of the American Expeditionary Forces, AEF, were in France. Harry was promoted to captain, effective April 23rd, and in July became commander of the newly arrived Battery D, 129th Field Artillery, 35th Division. Battery D was known for its discipline problems, and Harry was initially unpopular because of his efforts to restore order. Despite attempts by the men to intimidate him into quitting, he succeeded by making his corporals and sergeants accountable for discipline. He promised to back them up if they performed capably and reduce them to private if they did not. In an event memorialized in battery law as the Battle of Who Run, his soldiers began to flee during a sudden night attack by the Germans in the Vosges Mountains. Harry succeeded at ordering his men to stay and fight, using profanity from his railroad days. The men were so surprised to hear him use such language that they immediately obeyed. Harry's unit went on to fight many battles, including saving the lives of the 28th Division soldiers who otherwise would have come under fire from the Germans. He did this by ignoring orders and getting a dressing down by his regimental commander, Colonel Carl D. Clem, who threatened to convene a court-martial. Due to Harry and his unit's bravery, this did not happen. The war was a transformative experience in which Harry manifested his leadership qualities. He had entered the service in 1917 as a family farmer who had worked in clerical jobs that did not require the ability to motivate and direct others, but during the war he gained leadership experience and a record of success that greatly enhanced and supported his post-war politics career in Missouri. Harry was honourably discharged from the army as a captain on the 6th of May 1919. After his wartime service, Harry returned to Independence, where he married Bess Wallace on the 28th of June 1919. The couple had one child, Mary Margaret Truman. In 1920 he was appointed a major in the Officers' Reserve Corps. He became a lieutenant colonel in 1925 and a colonel in 1932. He volunteered for active military service during World War II, but was not accepted, partly because of age and partly because of President Franklin D. Roosevelt desired senators and congressmen who belonged to the military reserves to support the war effort by remaining in Congress, or by ending their active duty service and resuming their congressional seats. He was awarded a World War I Victory Medal with 2 battle clasps and a defensive sector clasp. He was also the recipient of 2 Armed Forces Reserve Medals. After World War I, he became active in several business ventures. These included a lead and zinc mine near Commerce, Oklahoma, and in Kansas City real estate. Harry occasionally derived some income from these enterprises, but none proved successful in the long term. In 1922, Harry was elected as County Court Judge of Jackson County's Eastern District and a presiding judge elected county-wide. This was an administrative rather than a judicial court, like county commissioners in many other jurisdictions. In 1933 he was named Missouri's director for the Federal Re-Employment Program, part of the Civil Works Administration. After serving as county judge, he wanted to run for government or Congress. In the general election, Harry defeated incumbent Republican Roscoe C. Patterson by nearly 20 percentage points. In his first term, he spoke out against corporate greed and the damages of Wall Street speculators and other moneyed special interests attaining too much influence in national affairs. In 1945, an opportunity arose for Harry to become vice president, but he had repeatedly said that he was not in the race and that he did not want the vice presidency, and he remained reluctant. One reason was that his wife and sister Mary Jane were both on his Senate payroll, and he feared negative publicity. He was sworn in as vice president on the 20th of January 1945. After the inauguration, he called his mother, who instructed him, "Now you behave yourself." Harry's brief vice presidency was relatively uneventful. He mostly presided over the Senate and attended parties and receptions. He kept the same offices from his Senate years, mostly only using the Vice President's official office in the Capitol to greet visitors. He was the first Vice President to have a Secret Service agent assigned to him. He envisioned the office as a liaison between the Senate and the President. President Roosevelt rarely contacted him, even to inform him of major decisions. The President and Vice President met alone together only twice during their time in office. He had rarely discussed world affairs or domestic politics with Roosevelt. He was uninformed about major initiatives relating to the war and the top-secret Manhattan Project, which was about to test the world's first atomic bomb. In an event that generated negative publicity for Harry, he was photographed with actress Lauren Bacall sitting on top of a piano at the National Press Club, that he was playing for soldiers. Harry had been vice president for 82 days when President Roosevelt died on the 12th of April 1945. He received an urgent message to go immediately to the White House, where Eleanor Roosevelt told him that her husband had died after a massive cerebral hemorrhage. Harry asked her if there was anything he could do for her. She replied, "Is there anything we can do for you? For you are the one in trouble now." He was sworn in as president at 7:09 p.m. in the West Wing of the White House by Chief Justice Harlan F. Stone. On his first day, Harry told reporters, "Boys, if you ever pray, pray for me now. I don't know if you fellas ever had a load of hay fall on you, but when they told me what happened yesterday, I felt the moon, the stars, and all the planets had fallen on me." Harry asked all the members of Roosevelt's cabinet to remain in place, but he soon surrounded himself with his old friends and appointed several to high positions that seemed well beyond their competence, including his two secretaries of the Treasury, Fred Vinson and John Snyder. His closest friend in the White House was his military aide, Harry H. Vaughan, who knew little of military or foreign affairs and was criticized for trading access to the White House for expensive gifts. He loved to spend as much time as possible playing poker, telling stories, and sipping bourbon. Harry benefited from a honeymoon period from the success in defeating Nazi Germany in Europe and the nation celebrating VE Day on the 8th of May 1945, his 61st birthday. Although he was told briefly on the afternoon of the 12th of April that he had a new, highly destructive weapon, it was not until the 25th of April that Secretary of War Henry Stinson told him the details. Harry went to Berlin for the Potsdam Conference with Joseph Stalin and the British leader Winston Churchill, who was replaced at the last minute by his successor Clement Attlee. He was there when he learned of the Trinity test, the first atomic bomb on the 16th of July had been successful. He hinted to Stalin that he was about to use a new kind of weapon against the Japanese. Though this was the first time the Soviets had officially been given information about the atomic bomb, Stalin was already aware of the bomb project, having learnt about it through atomic espionage long before Harry did. In August, the Japanese government refused surrender demands as specifically outlined in the Potsdam Declaration. With the invasion of Japan imminent, Harry approved the schedule for dropping the two available bombs. He always said attacking Japan with atomic bombs saved many lives on both sides. Military estimates for the invasion of Japan were that it could take a year and result in 250,000 to 500,000 Allied casualties. Hiroshima was bombed on the 6th of August and Nagasaki 3 days later, leaving 105,000 dead. The Soviet Union declared war on Japan on the 9th of August and invaded Manchuria. Japan agreed to surrender the following day. He said of his actions, "As President of the United States, I had the fateful responsibility of deciding whether or not to use this weapon for the first time. It was the hardest decision I ever had to make, but the President cannot duck hard problems. He cannot pass the buck. I made the decision after discussions with the ablest men in our government, and after long and prayerful consideration. I decided that the bomb should be used to end the war quickly and save countless lives, Japanese as well as American." Harry was responsible for the creation of many agencies, including the US Air Force and the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. Next came the 1948 presidential election, which is remembered for Harry's stunning come-from-behind victory. In the spring of 1948, his public approval rating stood at 36%, and the president was nearly universally regarded as incapable of winning the general election. On the 13th of October 1948 in St. Paul, Minnesota, Harry gave an impressive radio broadcast, and within 2 weeks of the 1948 convention, he issued Executive Order 9981, ending racial discrimination in the armed services, and Executive Order 9980, to end discrimination in federal agencies. For his running mate, he accepted Kentucky Senator Alban W. Barkley. The campaign was a 21,928-mile presidential odyssey. In a personal appeal to the nation, Harry crisscrossed the United States by train, his whistle-stop speeches from the rear platform of an observation car. 6 stops in Michigan drew a combined 500,000 people. A full million turned out for the New York City ticker tape parade. The Soviet Union's atomic bomb project progressed much faster than had been expected, and they detonated their first bomb on the 29th of August 1949. Over the next few months, there was an intense debate that split the US government, military, and scientific communities regarding whether to proceed with the development of a far more powerful hydrogen bomb. The debate touched on matters from technical feasibility to strategic value to the morality of creating a massive destructive weapon. On the 31st of December 1950, Harry made the decision to go forward on the grounds that if the Soviets could make a H-bomb, the United States must do so as well and stay ahead in the nuclear arms race. The development achieved fruition with the first US H-bomb test on the 31st of October 1952, which was officially announced by Harry on the 7th of January 1953. On the 25th of June 1950, the North Korean army under Kim Il-sung invaded South Korea, starting the Korean War. In the early weeks of the war, the North Koreans easily pushed back their southern counterparts. Harry called for a naval blockade of Korea, only to learn that due to budget cutbacks, the US Navy could not enforce such a measure. He promptly urged the United Nations to intervene. It did, authorizing troops under the UN flag, led by US General Douglas MacArthur. By August 1950, US troops pouring into South Korea under UN auspices were able to stabilize the situation. UN forces led the counterattack, scoring a stunning surprise victory with an amphibious landing at the Battle of Incheon that nearly trapped the invaders. China surprised the UN forces with a large-scale invasion in November. The UN forces were forced back to below the 38th parallel, then recovered. By early 1951, the war became a fierce stalemate at about the 38th parallel, where it had begun. Harry rejected MacArthur's request to attack Chinese supply bases north of the Yalu, but MacArthur promoted his plan to Republican House Leader Joseph Martin, who leaked it to the press. Harry was gravely concerned further escalation of the war might lead to open conflict with the Soviet Union, which was already supplying weapons and providing warplanes, with South Korean markings and Soviet aircrew. Therefore, on the 11th of April 1951, he fired MacArthur from his commands. The dismissal of General Douglas MacArthur was among the least politically popular decisions in presidential history. Harry's approval rating plummeted, and he faced calls for his impeachment. Fierce criticism from virtually all quarters accused Harry of refusing to shoulder the blame for the war gone sour and blaming his generals instead. Others, including Eleanor Roosevelt and all the Joint Chiefs of Staff, publicly supported Harry's decision. MacArthur, meanwhile, returned to the United States to a hero's welcome and addressed a joint session of Congress, a speech the President called "a bunch of damn bullshit." In February 1952, Harry's approval mark stood at 22%, according to a Gallup poll, which is the all-time lowest approval mark for a sitting US president, though it was matched by Richard Nixon in 1974. Harry wanted extensive work doing to the White House, and Harry and his family moved across the road to Blair House while the work was being carried out. On the 1st of November 1950, Puerto Rican nationalists Grisilio Torrisola and Oscar Collazo attempted to assassinate Harry at Blair House. On the street outside the residence, Torrisola mortally wounded a White House policeman, Leslie Coffelt. Before he died, the officer shot and killed Torrisola. Collazo was wounded and stopped before he entered the house. He was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death in 1952. Harry commuted his sentence to life in prison. Throughout Harry's life, there have been many more scandals and controversies covering many topics, including civil rights, foreign policy, and many more, far too many to cover here. In 1956, Harry travelled to Europe with his wife. In Britain, he received an honorary degree in civil law from Oxford University and met with Winston Churchill. After a fall in his home in late 1964, Harry's physical condition declined. In 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Medicare bill at the Harry S. Truman Presidential Library and Museum and gave the first 2 Medicare cards to Harry and his wife Bess to honour the former president's fight for government health care while in office. On the 5th of December 1972, Harry was admitted to Kansas City's Research Hospital and Medical Center with pneumonia. He developed multiple organ failure, fell into a coma and died at 7:50 a.m. on the 26th of December at the age of 88. Bess Truman opted for a simple private service at the library rather than a state funeral in Washington. A week after the funeral, foreign dignitaries and Washington officials attended a memorial service at Washington National Cathedral. Bess died on the 18th of October 1982 at the age of 97 and was buried next to her husband. In 1991, he was inducted into the Hall of Famous Missourians, and a bronze bust depicting him is on permanent display in the rotunda of the Missouri State Capitol. An aircraft carrier is named after him, the USS Harry S. Truman, CVN-75, was christened on the 7th of September 1996. A statue of Harry S. Truman was installed in the US Capitol in Washington, D.C. on the 29th of September 2022 as part of the National Statuary Hall collection. He has also been honoured on 5 US postage stamps issued from 1973 to 1999. Harry and Bess's daughter Margaret died on the 29th of January 2008 at the age of 83. Let's see where Harry, Bess and Margaret's graves are located.
So there you have it, the grave of Harry S. Truman, 33rd US President. If you have enjoyed watching this video, then please like, subscribe and hit the bell for more content like this. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.